a lot of people, when they think about, like they want to be a writer or they think about what a screenwriter does, like, some people, like maybe my parents, my parents, people of that generation, they thought that being a screenwriter is turning in a job application and then going to work every day at a studio. Maybe that's what it was like during the studio system, but sitting at a desk and being assigned something and then doing it, right? That sort of 9-to-5 conception of like what a writer is or what having a job is. Other people, I'm sure they think it's like, okay, I'm alone in my bedroom or my office and I think of an idea for a movie and I write it from start to finish and then I give it to somebody and they buy it and then I get paid and then the process starts over and over again. And it's not really like that. Obviously there's those ideas like, where you're like, oh, usually the speccing a script or coming up with an original idea and writing from start to finish is a lot of times is like the option of last resort or something. You generally want to get paid before you write something, right? Like you don't want to do the entire work and then nobody's interested or something like that. So so that's on the pitch side, right? In pitching, either you're coming up with an idea yourself, right? An original idea, or you're finding maybe a piece of intellectual property, like a comic book you like or a book or something that you find and you say, oh, I want to make this, and then you come up with a pitch around it and you pitch different buyers or producers. Usually you pitch producers or something. And they say, okay, we're interested in developing that idea with you, and then you develop that idea further, and then you take that out to buyers, right, who would then finance the writing of the script. And then those things that come to you because other people bring them to you, ideas, right, where like an executive, a production executive, or a producer says, oh, we have this original idea we'd like to make a thriller set in an office building or something, you know what I mean? Like after hours or something like that. Okay, well, can you come up with a pitch, an idea for that, right? And it's not you're not the only person they're talking to, right? It's you and like 10 other writers or 15 other writers or whatever, and they say, is that something that you're interested in? And right, 10 of those writers are interested, 5 of those writers are interested, whatever. They all come up with pitches, and then they come back in the room, they deliver the pitch, and then they say, we like that guy as the best. And then they develop that pitch, and then they take that out to financiers to get that script made. And sometimes, after all that, sometimes financiers are not interested in making that movie, right? Or they want to see that idea executed. They're like, well, we like that, but we want to see how it's executed on the page. And then the producer says, can you write that on spec for me or whatever? So sometimes you do, or sometimes you don't like that. So that's sort of the business. Or sometimes, like instead of an original idea, the producers will have a book or a comic book or a short story or something like that, right? And they'll take that out to writers and they'll say, oh, we like Kevin Koehler for this. Send him the book and see if he sparks to it. And I read it, and then sometimes I'm like, I don't like this book. And that's the end of it. Or sometimes I'm like, okay, I do like this book. And then you develop an idea for it. You go in, you tell them your ideas, and then they're hearing ideas from 5 other people, 10 other people, whatever, and then they pick the one they like best, and then you try to get that script financed. Or sometimes they do a thing called packaging, right? Where you're like, I'm in that process right now with a lot of films, right? Where you write a script on spec, and they say, okay, that's great, right? And then you match it up with a producer, or you match it up with like a director or something, right? Because in this business, right, if you want to be, the way movies get made is because directors want to make them and actors want to make them. They're the people that really get movies made, okay? Well, besides like the obvious, like studios who cut the checks, but, below that, that's how movies get financed, right? So it's like you got to write things that actors want to act in and directors want to direct, right? And the way you determine that a lot of times, right, is by packaging, right? It takes the risk out of the studio side of things and the financing side. Like rather than studios and financiers purchasing something and then trying to get actors and directors attached, right? They want those elements attached before they get to it because they don't want to buy it and then nobody wants to direct it or nobody wants to act in it, right? So like when you're at an agency or whatever, like my agency, William Morris Endeavor, like they say, okay, we like this script, we want to get our talent involved in it, and they try to do a thing called packaging where they give it to their directors give it to their actors, generally like one at a time or whatever. You're like, okay, pick some actors you want to go to. Okay, I want to go to Brad Pitt or whatever, you know, or Mark Wahlberg. Okay, so it's like, okay, so they give it to that guy, and then, you know, Mark Wahlberg or whatever reads it and it says, okay, I like it or I don't like it. Usually he doesn't like it, right? So he doesn't like it, go to another guy. You know what I mean? So that's sort of how the process works, and it takes a long time. Like we're still, you know, we're packaging a movie right now that I wrote 4 years ago. You know what I mean? So it's sort of it's a long process.
Right.
So that's sort of the beginning of things.